It's here, everybody. The season opener for the BYU football program. They take on the USF Bulls. The guy you see on the right there is Will Turner. He covers the Bulls on a day-to-day basis for 24/7 Sports. He's been on the podcast before. Excited to catch up with him. We'll go back and forth on this and get you ready for this matchup between the Bulls and the Cougars.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making us a part of your day, your first listen of the day, in fact. Very excited to welcome in Will Turner here, but a quick reminder that we are proud to be part of the Locked On Podcast Network. The motto around these parts is your team every day, and as such, this is your only daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars, so thank you for joining us. Will, thank you for coming back to the show, by the way, my friend. How are you?
It's game week, man. I appreciate you for having me back on. It's like I said, it's game week. It feels good that it's finally here. I'm tired of writing about hypotheticals, and we're ready to go down here in the Sunshine State.
Let's actually get some football underway, right? That's what we're all looking at right now.
Yep.
That's the fun part about this. And I wanted to have you on, obviously, because you're covering the Bulls on a day-to-day basis for 24/7 Sports, absolutely killing it. I think you do a fantastic job.
I appreciate that.
I want to start here. What is the, I guess, overall feeling for USF right now, literally just days, hours, whatever it might be, whatever people watch this, it's coming up. It is here. What is the feeling around the Bulls program right now heading into the season opener?
Yeah, so I think there's obviously a lot of optimism, and there's optimism around the entire country, and that's just kind of how things are at the beginning of the season. But there's a good sense of hope around the USF program. Obviously, this is a program that has, just 5 short years ago was winning double-digit games, and in the hunt for American Athletic Conference titles, and they've been on a slide ever since, the midway point of the Charlie Strong era. And so they enter this year, the third year of USF head coach Jeff Scott's tenure, one of the most important years of the program's 26-year history. Obviously, as we, have talked about previously about conference realignment, where USF stands in regards to that, just them missing out on the Big 12. So they're going to be, really trying to get their house in order with the on-field product to be able to catapult themselves and put themselves back into conference relevancy and potentially even some national relevancy as well, in the grand scheme of things. So there's a good amount of hope. They've completely revamped both sides of the ball. You'll see a noticeable difference defensively in terms of scheme. Offense will be pretty similar, but because of the 2 new coordinators, and offensive coordinator Travis Trickett and defensive coordinator Bob Shoop, you'll see plenty of difference on both sides of the football, and it should be a much improved USF team from what fans saw specifically in the first half of last year's game at Lavelle Edwards.
Okay, you mentioned the 2 coordinators, Trickett and obviously Shoop coming in here. What was the response from Bulls fans when they first were hired? And I think as they get closer to the season, they probably started to see the stories kind of filter out about how these guys are going to operate their defense and the offense respectively. What do you think right now that fans think about this? Because it was an overhaul. There's no doubt about it. It was an overhaul in the offseason.
Without a doubt, with Bob Shoop, he was kind of a under the radar type of hire. There were several candidates that would have been alumni coming back to the program that USF fans were really leaning for in the grand scheme of things. And from all indications, those candidates were interviewed. As well as linebackers coach Ernie Sims was also in the discussion, from what I was told. From there, Bob Shoop, like I said, really under the radar selection of a defensive coordinator, had lots of interest around him and what he wanted to do. He was serving under Manny Diaz at Miami as a defensive analyst. Before that, he was a safeties coach at Michigan with Jim Harbaugh. So he's been around the block. He's been with James Franklin at Penn State, with Butch Jones at Tennessee, was at Mississippi State, I believe, in between those two stops. So he's been around. He's been a very successful defensive coordinator pretty much everywhere he goes. And like I said, he had SMU interested in him from what sources told me. Clemson was poking around, depending upon what would happen with Brent Venables. So there were some high level teams that were, potentially interested in his services, but USF brought him in. He's going to blitz a lot more than you saw last year under Glenn Spencer, and really just is going to put guys in the right position to make plays. And that seems to be the indication on both sides of the football. Travis Trickett, who was the former inside receivers and tight ends coach at West Virginia for the past 3 seasons, where his alma mater. He comes back to be an offensive coordinator for the first time in 3 seasons. He was the offensive coordinator, I believe, at Florida Atlantic and Georgia State prior to that. So he's been a coordinator before. Like I said, first time in 3-4 seasons that he's calling plays again. And he takes over. I think USF fans were a little bit more skeptical about Travis Trickett's offensive prowess. But what I can say he does really well is he transforms quarterbacks, and he's a great quarterback coach from everything that I've heard around, some of the guys that he's trained in the past at Georgia State and FAU, and you saw kind of some improvement in the spring game with some of the guys that USF had, and Kid Travis Marsh and Timmy McClain, who McClain is now transferred to UCF. But, you've seen some improvement with those guys. So he's a great quarterback teacher. We'll see how the offense goes. He hasn't really, had any top 20 offenses in his career, but he certainly had some serviceable offenses. And this is without a doubt going to be the most talented offensive, weaponry that he's had in his tenures as an offensive coordinator. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with a full deck of cards and what he can produce with it.
And Jeff Scott, I would assume, is still going to be involved with this offense. That's his background, right? He's going to have his fingerprints on it, I would imagine, too. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much it is anymore. Within the first couple of years, you could see that, he definitely had, like, he had his moments where, if it was a big 2-point conversion, like, he knew what play they were going to run. Like, he was going to call the play. I'm curious to see, now in year 3, if that trust is kind of completely gone back to the offensive coordinator. Towards the end of the Charlie Weiss Jr. tenure, as far as I knew it was 95% Weiss. So the thing about Jeff Scott is Jeff Scott never called plays at Clemson. From what I understand, I believe it was all Tony Elliott, who's now the head coach of Virginia. Yeah. Scott was a receivers coach who had been promoted to that co-offensive coordinator position. And if I remember correctly, he just didn't call plays, which, not every coach is a play caller. And Jeff Scott's a little bit more of that CEO style of a head coach. And makes the big decisions when he needs to make the big decisions. But I'm sure he'll have some input on the offense without a doubt, but it's not going to be a huge noticeable, from his previous stops.
Let's talk about Gary Bohannon. BYU fans are very familiar with him. He leads, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I think I read it was it 30 transfers into this program in the offseason? Was that the number? Do you have it off the top of your head?
So there's 30 4-year college transfers on the roster in total.
Okay.
So that includes guys that have transferred in from previous years. Uh-huh. That doesn't include your JUCO transfers. But yeah, 30 over the entirety of this roster. So they brought in I'm trying to remember the final number now. I believe it was like 13 or 14, because there were a couple of guys that there was one that didn't make it to campus. There was one that his academics are in flux at the moment, from what Jeff Scott has said. So it's been a healthy number. It's still in double figures. I want to say it's probably closer to 13 to 15 now. They had 21 newcomers enter in January as opposed to in the summer. So those guys have had 8 months of, being a part of the program, being a part of the strength strength and conditioning workouts over the winter months and the spring and the summer. So they've got, playbook experience, obviously now having the spring in and having your 2 coordinators there for now 8 months as well. So that's really going to help out as well is a lot of those transfers, they're 8 months into the program. This is their first game experience with USF, but they're not green to the program. They're not coming in, over the summer like traditional guys, except for Gary Bohannon, who came in and committed on Mother's Day and was a late add to the team because USF was not looking to add a transfer quarterback. They were looking with Timmy McClain, and they thought he was going to be the guy. But when Gary Bohannon's name popped in the transfer portal, that was a name that, won 10 games at Baylor, won a Sugar Bowl with the Bears, helped the Bears to a Big 12 championship last year. That was a guy that you just don't turn down if he has interest in your program. So Gary's still pretty green to the program. Got in over the summer and joined the team for the summer workouts and the start of fall camp. But from every indication, I mean, he has been just a fiend in playbook study, in learning how this offense works, getting his timing with the receivers, all the good things that you want to hear a quarterback is doing when they get into the program. Gary Bohannon has done just about that. I believe there was a quote that Jeff Scott said. It was over Memorial Day weekend or something like that. There was one car in the parking lot watching film, and that was Gary Bohannon.
Okay.
So, just that kind of guy that's meticulous in his game study and what he wants to do. And so, yeah, he's probably, like I said, the newest transfer for sure, but he's also not green to the program at this point.
Absolutely. I want to talk about some more individual players. We'll get to those momentarily. I do need to get a word in real quick from our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all of your pro and college football betting needs and sports information this season, my friends. Right now, the line as of recording of this podcast, BYU minus 12, according to our friends at BetOnline. If you are interested in that, find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, podcasts, including this year's opening week's games right now at BetOnline. It is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. It is the fastest and the easiest way to check in on all of your other favorite sports and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf as well. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action available to you now. It's all courtesy of your friends at BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Continuing on here with Will Turner from 24/7 Sports covering the USF Bulls. And Will, we talked about Gary Bohannon, and he's going to lead this offense for USF. And I've got to admit, in the second half of that game last year at Lavelle Edwards Stadium, Timmy McClain and the USF offense, it felt like they came alive to a degree. And so I want to ask you this. They made some moves to upgrade certain positions in the offseason. Some of them were receiver, quarterback, obviously, with Gary Bohannon taking over. How much better is this offense overall going into this season, in your opinion, versus what BYU fans would have seen a year ago at LES?
I think it's one of the most well-stocked offenses in the country, in all honesty. I mean, USF returns the 5th most production per S&P Plus, according to ESPN's Bill Connolly. BYU, of course, is right up there as well, right, within the top 5. USF's one of the things that I said very early when USF was searching for an offensive coordinator was this offensive coordinator job was going to be very desirable for anybody that was going to want a stocked running back room, wide receiver room, offensive line room. Pick your poison. It's, PYP as we joke sometimes. It was so well stocked around the offensive side of the football. You had a quarterback who was a true freshman and started 9 games as a true freshman, and played in 11 out of your 12. So, you had a kid with experience, and so that, looked beneficial for USF. You've got the most experienced offensive line in the country at USF. They've had 154 combined starts between the 5 guys up front. You've got 4 super seniors in left tackle Donovan Jennings, left guard Meech Harris, center Brad Cecil, and right tackle DeMontre Jacobs. The 3 guys on the left are USF guys. They've been in the program for 5-6 years now. DeMontre Jacobs enters his 3rd year with the program. Before that, he was at Grambling and started a year or 2. And then at right guard, you've got a guy that started the final 9 games of the 2021 season in Dustin Hall. So you've got plenty of returning starts on your offensive line and a very experienced group up front. The running back room is no different. Jaren Mangum rushed for 15 touchdowns. BYU fans saw him come alive in the second half of that game in Provo. And then Xavier Weaver had a pretty nice game, if I remember correctly, last year, the reverse fixture. And he had the best receiving season by a USF wideout in 4 years. So, and by a wide margin too, with over 700 yards receiving. So, you add in that with an experienced quarterback in Gary Bohannon and what he's done in a quarterback that, frankly, has big game experience of beating a BYU or a Texas or an Oklahoma or, an Iowa State or West Virginia, a guy that's done it in a Power 5 conference, and you bring that experience to USF. I mean, it's a recipe for success, on the offensive side of the football. So I can't say it enough that room is just, that side is just, the second half was a good indication of what USF can do when they play to their strengths, with the guys that, getting the ball in the hands of the guys that can make plays, like an Xavier Weaver, like a Jaren Mangum, and some of these transfers that are coming in as well.
Well, and I agree with you on that. And that's going to be an interesting part. You mentioned both of these offenses, a ton of returning production. And it's a similar thing for BYU's defense. BYU's defense, like, is 97% of their returning production is coming back for the Cougars on defense. And let's be honest, in the second half, it felt like Timmy McClain, they just could not corral that dude. And it was a crazy kind of tale of two halves, it felt like, in many ways, in that matchup. So where does USF's defense kind of stand as a whole right now? I know that they have probably a few more transfers that are expected to start on the defensive side of the football than the offense, but where do things stand for the Bulls defensively?
It's completely rebuilt. I mean, the one thing that they had to do over the offseason was, two main things, really, and that was build quality depth in your defensive line room and build quality depth in your secondary. And, USF had, we all love our walk-ons and we all love our walk-on stories.
Yeah.
But goodness gracious, USF had so many walk-ons playing significant game stretch. I mean, significant snaps. I mean, and now some of those guys like Josh Green and Tamarcus Simpson have earned scholarships, and rightfully so. So, but there are guys even further down the depth chart that were getting some time last year because USF was just so thin on the back end. One of the things that I mentioned too was about, Bob Shoop was he wants to put guys in the right position to make plays. And unfortunately for USF, and unfortunately for this player, Vince, his nickname is Smoke, Vince Smoke Davis, who's a graduate student, unfortunately had to retire from football with I believe some sort of severe head and neck injury or something of that caused him to step away from the game. And so he played that star role really, really well. The hybrid outside linebacker safety position, for those that aren't familiar with the lingo. He played that really, really well in USF's defense, and it looked like the position was made for him. Matt Hill, who started at strong safety, a former Auburn transfer, started nearly every game for USF at strong safety last year, moves down to the star position this year for USF. And from all indications, he's been one of the MVPs of fall camp in the early practices. And there were times last year where Matt Hill really struggled at strong safety. And you could tell it was his first time in a significant amount of time that he had played strong safety. He played a little bit in high school and practiced at Auburn, but never really had the game experience that USF needed. But moves over to this new position and plays amazing in camp. So it's been great to hear about his improvements. So, the secondary is one thing. Amaris Brown, a Kansas State transfer, he should slide into that nickel back role, or he could play a little nickel. He could play some corner. He was a safety coming out of high school. So he could do a little bit of everything. But like I said, sounds like they've slid him down closer to the line of scrimmage, which is going to be important for USF. And then the defensive line room is I mean, that room is wide open without a doubt. USF was towards the bottom of the country, if not at the very bottom of the country, in sacking the quarterback. They only had 9, which was next to Vanderbilt.
BYU, let me just interject. BYU fans feel like that's paltry. They didn't have that good of a sacking year themselves, so there you go.
Yeah, I trust me. I've heard the BYU fans they love that rush 3 drop 8 defense, man. It's great. USF did a lot of that too last year, and only registered 9 sacks on the year. BYU had a few more, a handful more. USF was towards the bottom, and their leading tackle, their leading TFL guy, and their leading sack guy were both linebackers. Which is, you want to make sure you can get consistent penetration through the offensive line, whether it's BYU, whether it's Baylor, whether it's Alabama, whether it's North Texas. You want to get pressure to the quarterback with your defensive lineman. It creates so many other opportunities for your secondary to, not have to run around all over the field all night long. So USF did a good job, I think, in terms of finding some quality depth. Tramel Logan is going to be a breakout candidate. He's a COVID year sophomore out of Miami, Florida. He's going to be a guy that I think could have a big impact. And then Rashawn Yates is a super senior that came back. He's probably the most consistent out of those guys. Jonathan Ross is a Division II All-American from Bowie State in Maryland, and he comes to USF as a transfer. Had some mind-boggling statistics at Bowie State. And then so he should be counted on. And then you've got some true freshmen in Eddie Kelly, who was a kid that picked USF over significant interest from Florida and Florida State last year. You've got Michael Williams, a Michigan product that was highly recruited by Michigan and Michigan State before a knee injury derailed his junior season, and his stock kind of fell a little bit. He was a very near 4-star recruit for USF, so he could see some time as a true freshman. But the real question is going to be getting Jatorian Hansford as well as the DN room. But the real question for USF is getting production and quality depth out of the D tackle position. 2 of the transfers that they've been hoping on won't be with the team this year. One's at Florida A&M. The other is still on the roster, but Jeff Scott confirmed it will not be with the team this year due to academics, as I said. So they're going to get a lot of production out of Rashad Cheney, a Minnesota transfer. DeJuan Cease, who's a walk-on that just got a scholarship. He should be one that should be in the rotation as well. Rashawn Yates can slide over to D tackle from the DN spot. So they're going to need some guys to step up at the D tackle spot. They brought in Nick Baggs from Temple as a transfer this offseason, so he'll be another one that they need to rely on. And then they brought in a basketball guy from Byron Matos, who played power forward for USF and before that was a highly regarded baseball prospect in the Dominican Republic. I mean, this dude can throw mid-90s on his fastball, dunk on you, and apparently he's going to go and try block field goals this year. So, so that's kind of fun. He's probably a year away, though, just because, this is his first time playing football and all that. But this is where USF is going to try and get some quality depth out of their defensive line room and find some places that, maybe they didn't think production would come from.
A 3-sport athlete playing his 3rd sport, I guess, technically. That's crazy. Yep. Well, we'll see how it shakes out. All right, Will, I want to kind of get your keys to the game and a prediction. We'll get to that here momentarily as we continue on with Locked On Cougars. I want to remind you guys of our ultimate NFL preview, the ultimate pro football preview, 2022. It's an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. Local team experts on the Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combining into one ultimate NFL preview. Search for the ultimate pro football preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. All right, Will. People, by the way, where can they find your work? I meant to give you a plug earlier. It's Bulls 24/7. Is that correct? Is that the website?
Yep. Bulls247.com. And then as you see below me at W Turner 24/7 is where you can get all my commentary. I'll be on the field Saturday with a camera in my hand, but I usually give a fair share of field level observations. You get a little bit of a different angle on the field than in the box, so that's always fun. But no, I'll be there. I'll be tweeting out observations, and you can catch all the latest surrounding USF over at bulls247.com.
Well, you got the camera in your hand, so you're truly an MMJ, a multimedia journalist. There's no doubt about that. If you're doing all that, but that'd be cool. We'll be sure to let people know where they can find you. All right, so Will, for USF to spring this upset, as we mentioned, our friends over at Bet Online, one of our sponsors here on the network, they have BYU as a 12-point favorite. So if USF were to spring the upset, what are the keys to a Bulls victory over the Cougars?
Yeah, so I think I think. Ultimately, the first one, in my opinion, is USF is going to have to start fast. They're going to have to. I mean, you can't get behind 21-0 like they did last year at Provo. I mean, if they don't start down, if they don't spot BYU 21 points in the first quarter, that game could have ended up in a USF upset in Provo. So, they've got to start quick. Maybe the fact that you have two new coordinators that haven't called plays in a while and could throw some different wrinkles that haven't been on film. Maybe that catches BYU a little bit off guard. Maybe the humidity at 4:00 will catch BYU a little bit off guard. I saw they flew down to Tampa today. It's a good day to do it because it has been pouring for the last hour and it's going to get steamed up. So it'll be steamy on the rest of the day today. It'll be steamy all day tomorrow and Saturday as well. So maybe the humidity catches BYU off guard a little bit. Obviously, a lot of those guys have been here for the 2019 game, or a decent amount at least. But starting fast is going to be the biggest key. I think we're going to know. I think the winner is determined within the first 15 to 25 minutes of that ball game on Saturday. If USF does not start fast, I don't think they're going to be able to match BYU score for score if they get behind. I think another key for USF is going to be stopping BYU on third down. BYU, of course, as Cougar fans know, were very good on third down and very good at getting third and manageable. The fact that they converted third downs at a 45% clip is a scary statistic for me on paper. USF did have a little bit of an outlier. The Cougars were only 2 for 7 on third down in last year's game. So USF did a better job. But look at how BYU got their yardage. It was a lot of first and second down explosive plays, whether that was through the air with Baylor Romney or Tyler Algier on the ground. So USF is going to have to find a way to get BYU out of those third and manageable situations to cut down on those third down conversions. They're going to have to win first down. They're going to have to win second down to make Jaron Hall and company have to go a little bit farther on third. So those are my two big ones. I think starting fast for sure. And I think getting BYU to, force a longer third down conversion on a more consistent basis than they did maybe last year.
I like both of those. Those are, I think, very, very valid things in this. All right, Will. So last thing for me, I want your score prediction for the game.
So, so since day one of this matchup, it's the stars have aligned, and I've said this on Twitter. I've said this on radio hits. I've said this on podcasts with two new coordinators, with two guys that, like I said, haven't coached, haven't called plays in a while, that could throw out some wrinkles, with a quarterback that's beaten BYU, that knows how to beat BYU, and Gary Bohannon, a 4:00 kickoff in Tampa at Raymond James. I mean, the humidity, BYU doesn't travel amazing to Florida. They just got their first win.
I say their history is not great. There's no doubt.
Right. Well, and then even look at the Independence Bowl last year. Yeah. I mean, so, I think I've forecasted a USF upset since day one. 31-28 is kind of where I'm sitting at right now.
Okay.
And nobody can call me a homer because I had BYU winning last year in Provo. So, and I probably had BYU winning back in 2019 as well. But like I said, it's in my mind, it's a back and forth game. I think it's going to be closer than the 12-point spread. I think USF will cover the 12-point spread. In my opinion, I think plus 12 is generous for them. I think they're going to keep it within that, especially based on the second half of last year's game. But again, like I said, if BYU rolls, I'm not going to be sitting in the press box, necessarily surprised.
Sure.
I think the Cougars are a very, very good team. I think Jaron Hall is one of the best quarterbacks in college football, one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in college football, and obviously one of the most experienced teams, one of the best coaching staffs in college football, in my opinion. So like I said, I'm not going to be shocked if BYU wins this one on Saturday afternoon, but just because there's so many coincidental things, it just feels too good to be true not to kind of predict the USF upset here.
Okay, I can dig that. I respect that, and I do remember you saying you predicted BYU would win the game last year, and they did do it. So I'm with you on that. Well, Will, it was fantastic to catch up with you once again. I hope this is not the last time we'll have you on the podcast. I do think that they're scheduled to play another game in this series in 2026. Am I correct?
Correct. Yeah, October of 2026. It was supposed to be next year that USF returned to LaVell Edwards Stadium, but with the Big 12 expansion, BYU ended up moving that game. I'm happy it at least got moved as opposed to canceled, which you can't say for a lot of other games on BYU's schedule.
Considering how many games BYU has been canceling, it's not a bad deal that it just got moved a little bit. But yeah, we'll be in touch as that game probably gets closer in future seasons. But at the same time, we'll be following your work as well. Thanks again for taking some time.
Of course. Appreciate you, Jake.
All right, that's Will Turner from Bulls 24/7. Make sure you follow him. You can see his Twitter handle right down here, W Turner 24/7. That's going to do it for us. Enjoy the game, everybody. And of course, we'll be recapping it as soon as it goes final. This has been the Locked On Cougars podcast. See ya.